CBS News Los Angeles.
They blame the tech giant for ignoring parents' concerns. They say the algorithm is designed to addict children to the platform. Parents had a lot of heartbreaking stories.
A quarter of a counterfeit pill he got through Snapchat. It was pure fentanyl. His last message was on Snap, "Are you sure this was real?"
In New York City, state and local officials raised the giant pride flag again at the Stonewall National Monument after an order by the Trump administration ordered it to be removed. The monument stands outside the historic Stonewall Inn. That's the birthplace of the modern LGBTQ+ rights movement. On Wall Street, stocks plummeted today. This is CBS News.
Join Adriana Diaz and Kelly O'Grady for the perfect start to your weekend. Ease into your Saturday with CBS Saturday Morning on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
Staples presents That Was Easy.
So I opened a restaurant and needed everything. Menus, signage, catering brochures.
Everything and then some.
I went to Staples. They printed it all and even suggested takeout menus.
One money pit with a side of fries.
But now at Staples, you get up to $125 off custom print orders.
$125 off. Now you're cooking. Brand your business in a big way at Staples.
That was easy.
Shop Staples in store, online, or in the app by 4/4 to unlock. Exclusions apply. Visit staples.com/print for details.
At the UPS Store, we know being a small business owner means holiday time is still go time. Still get those orders shipped time. And still re-up on stamps and supplies time. That's why this upcoming holiday, while others close up shop, we'll be open. And happy to help you keep being unstoppable. Come into your local store today. Most locations are independently owned. Product, services, pricing, and hours of operation may vary. See Center for details. The UPS Store. Be unstoppable.
Good afternoon, T-Dot's wrapping up the couple of wrecks we had earlier over on 440. Here's what we're seeing: heavier traffic 40 east now at Donaldson Pike, pushing on out towards Wilson County through the Mount Juliet area. Watch for radar. It's loading up again with more volume on 24 east. It's been busy just trying to get out through the Antioch area as you continue 24 east, pushing out into Murfreesboro. STR Towing and Recovery says give them a call 24/7 if you need help with a tow for a car or a big truck. I'm Commander Chuck. You're on-time traffic.
Local farmers, local meats, vegetables, and other produce at the Winter Spring Rutherford County Farmers Market.
Bundle up and make your way every Friday at Lane Agri Park.
Rutherford weather. Cleared to partly cloudy skies tonight. Lows drop to 31 degrees. And then an abundance of sunshine Friday with highs nearing 60. I'm Phil Jensko from the WGNS Rutherford Weather Center. Right now it's 56.
We do it your way at Sir Pizza.
Join the team at Murfreesboro's favorite pizza restaurant. Sir Pizza is now hiring at all 3 locations. Come by and be part of the team at Sir Pizza.
We're the Good Neighbor Network, FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna, audio and video streaming at wgnsradio.com.
From the first pitch to the final buzzer, this is where the conversation starts. All sports talk on WGNS and Big G TV, covering the Preps, MTSU, news from Tennessee and nationwide. Now, here's all sports talk on the Good Neighbor Network.
And yes, welcome back inside the WGNS studio for another thrilling Thursday edition of All Sports Talk on this Thursday, February 12th, 2026. Dylan Simmons with you. Glad to be with you on this Thursday night and hope you're enjoying your precursor to Valentine's Day weekend. Shout out to all the lovebirds out there, of which I am not one of them. But whether you are out there with somebody or if you're one of the single chumps like me, well, I welcome you to the show and we're going to try to make it as entertaining as possible for you tonight. We have a jam-packed edition of the show. We got a lot to talk about. We've got MTSU basketball, of course, still hot on the heels of the Conference USA tournament in both men's and women's. We've got MTSU baseball debuting for 2026 this weekend. MTSU men's tennis has a couple of huge matches coming up. And, of course, the great American race, the Daytona 500, and all the corresponding events coming up this weekend as well. We'll talk about all of that in due time on the show. Let's start tonight with some talk about MTSU men's basketball. and they had a big matchup on the road in Newark, Delaware, not New Jersey, Newark, Delaware, against the Blue Hens in Conference USA action this past Saturday. And it was a wild game, and it was a game where it felt like it was right out of MTSU's reach yet again, which unfortunately has become somewhat of a trend for the Blue Raiders lately. It's like when you're a kid and you see the cookie jar or you see the ice cream, and it's right there on the top shelf, and you really want it. You try everything that you can to get it, but you just don't have the height. And in this case, MTSU has been right there on the cusp of getting these victories, but they just haven't been able to put it all together, and that's unfortunately been the trend for them, and that was no exception here in this Delaware game. We'll get more into it in just a second. This one in particular was pretty close the entire way through, and believe it or not, this was the 4th overtime game that MTSU has played in the last month. 4 overtime games in 1 month. I mean, I don't know the exact stats on that, but when was the last time in college basketball history we had a team be in 4 overtime games in a month's time? That probably doesn't happen in NBA circles, much less college basketball. That doesn't just happen out of the blue. No pun intended, by the way. I mean, that's just craziness to have that many games in overtime. And I got to say, that may be having an effect on MTSU's stamina because you're playing longer games than other teams are, and you're having to exhaust your options as far as who's going to be able to play and who's going to be able to make it the entire distance. So there's a lot to consider just from a coaching aspect on these long games. But regardless of that, this game, like I said, pretty much up for grabs the whole time. Much like what we saw in the Missouri State game earlier this month, it was basically evenly contested all the way through. What MTSU did really well early was get the defense rolling. And they've gotten better as this season has gone on at creating turnovers, and they did that well against the Blue Hens. Coaches will tell you all the time, if you can get the turnovers going against your opponent and force them into a bad spot where they're continuing to mess up, they get in their own heads, and you, as a result, gain more confidence, you get more flow with your offense, and you get better opportunities on fast breaks, which MTSU has really excelled at points this year. And this was another example early in this game in Newark of being able to capitalize on opponents' turnovers and use them to your advantage. And it's cliche, but the best offense is often a great defense, and we saw that early for MTSU in this game. Again, that's why creating turnovers is so crucial and why coaches in any sport really emphasize the turnover battle if it is applicable to their individual game. It was big early on for MTSU. Rebounding-wise, they were also much better as far as efficiency goes. MTSU did a great job of generating boards in this game and getting second-chance opportunities. One thing I have noticed watching MTSU in a few of these games this year is they like coming out to play like they have something to prove. And they play, it almost seems like with a chip on their shoulder. Not to say that isn't justified or whatever the case is, but they definitely play with some intensity early on. And it gets them out oftentimes to a great lead or a great play style. I think in the first half we saw that come to fruition a lot in this game. The thing about coming out of the gate swinging, it's like a distance race. You can come out swinging and you can come out really fast, but if you wear yourself out too fast, then you may not have enough energy for later on. And we've seen that a few times in MTSU games this season. Now, that's not me declaring that's a blanket statement about the team, but it has been something that at least I've picked up on a little bit as this game has gone forward, and I wonder if that affected this game late. Again, it's just I'd say a far-flung hypothesis, but it is something that MTSU, they've come out strong early in games and then maybe not had the same juice late. Maybe that's just the play duration. Again, maybe it's all the overtime games, but maybe it is the pace in the opening minutes. I guess time will tell as we go further along into the season. Offensively, there was a lot to be excited about with a balanced attack for the Blue Raiders. This was the first game since February of last year where 3 different players for MTSU got 20-plus points in the game. Torrey Alston and Kamari Lands both had 21 points. Alec Oglesby got 20 points by himself as well. By themselves, as a combined unit, these guys got over 70 points, 9 assists, and they committed just 4 turnovers. So MTSU, as far as efficiency, they were top-notch, and these 3 guys led the way. we've talked a lot about these three, I think, throughout the year. They've kind of been the main characters for the team. Torrey Alston, Kamari Lands, and Alec Oglesby. Of course, we've seen Oglesby go off in a big way. He had that record-setting performance, as did MTSU a few weeks back when they had 22 threes in a game, 8 total threes from Oglesby. Kamari has been a consistent 20-plus point scorer for MTSU. And Torrey Alston, he's been on a heater lately. I got to see him in person against Western Kentucky and FIU here in the Murphy Center, or here at the Murphy Center nearby, and he was just unbelievable. He's gotten so much better as this season has moved forward, and he's really utilizing that big frame to a high degree and to a high level. So he's done a fantastic job of that, and that really helped MTSU down the stretch in this game. And it shows you that as far as this roster goes, they've got some of the best offensive pieces in Conference USA, and when they're playing at their pinnacle, it's hard for anybody to match them, even if you've got a dynamic defense that can sort of hold them in check to some degree. It's really, really hard to do. I think the offensive ability from these guys continues to show also how well this team has gotten in terms of chemistry. They play much better team basketball than they did early on in the season, and I'm sure that's been a huge thing that Nick McDevitt has been emphasizing as this year has gone on. The passing, the open shots, they're becoming more prevalent as the year goes on and on. You can see it in how they operate. I think there were times early in the season where MTSU would almost rely on one or two guys to kind of lead the way and let them be the ones who directed traffic. But now they're going to the hot hand. They're getting more players involved, and you see a situation like this where you get 3 players with 20-plus points, and it just goes to show you that these guys are accounting more for the situation at hand. They're trying to confuse the opposing defense, and they're having success doing it. So I think offensively this game against Delaware in the second half was a big win for MTSU down the stretch. However, obviously MTSU wasn't able to come away with the victory, so what gives? If there's one possible weakness with the team right now, it's the defense, and it's been something that stuck out a little bit in the past few games. In 3 of their last 4 contests, MTSU has given up 80-plus points. Granted, a couple of those included overtime, but that is still a lot of offense to be giving up in a 40-minute span. I think there are times as a team where on one end you get so focused on your scoring consistency that on the other end you're not quite as where you need to be as far as in the game goes. Now, I'm not saying that is purposeful, by the way. In many occasions, I think it's a subconscious thing when it comes to being a basketball player. I just think, and again, this is a theory for me, but I wonder if the level of offense they play at one end of the floor does tire them out as far as the defense goes on the other end. Whatever the case is, in this situation, the defense just couldn't find a way to consistently stop Delaware from beyond the arc. And that's really what hurt them in the second half, is that the Blue Hens consistently were able to get open shots from beyond the arc, from three-point land, and they were able to mount the comeback against MTSU, and eventually they were able to somewhat take control of the game. And in the second half, they got that lead extended and put themselves in position to seal the deal. Of course, MTSU was able to force overtime down the stretch, but Delaware, they just never let their foot off the gas. They stayed consistent, they kept the perimeter game going, and they kept MTSU in check on defense. Justin Fernandez and Christian Bliss, they were in a world of perpetual bliss, and these two combined got 48 points against that Blue Raiders defense. So when you can't stop your opponent from beyond the arc, it can get really concerning really quickly, and it was not long, like I mentioned before, Delaware was on top by double digits. And again, we've seen this in a few games this year. It happened against Liberty, where a team gets going from beyond the arc in MTSU's defense, which statistically it had a lot of success guarding the three-point shot, hasn't quite been able to keep up, and it happened here. Fernandez and Bliss figured that out. Full credit to them. What a fantastic game at home in Newark. They were able to keep Delaware in position to win and eventually overtake MTSU down the stretch. And it's a disappointing result for the Blue Raiders. Obviously, it's not what they wanted, and I'm sure that all these close losses continue to hang on MTSU a little bit, or it's something that they think about, and it's obviously not where they want to be. They've lost 5 games in a row now. It's a tough stretch, and every team goes through these tough stretches throughout the course of a season. This one is especially tough, and it's put MTSU in a really interesting spot going into tonight's game, which, by the way, is set to tip off here in, I'd say, about 15 minutes or so. MTSU goes on the road to take on Kennesaw State, who they beat in a barn burner back at the Murphy Center earlier this season. This feels like a game where MTSU almost has to have everything go right. They got to get back in rhythm late in the year. We've talked about it on the show a number of times, but you want to play your best college basketball in the months of February and March. This is where you want to put the pedal to the metal, get things on the right track, and put your team in position to win and win often against conference opponents. Because here's the big spoiler, and this is maybe shocking to some people, but the same teams you play in CUSA play are the same teams you're going to play in the Conference USA tournament. I know that may come as a stunner to some of you. Obviously, I'm kidding on that one, but it does stand to reason that, you want to play well against these teams because you're probably going to be meeting some of them in the CUSA tournament, and right now MTSU is even in jeopardy of maybe missing the conference tournament. 9th in the conference standings right now. Again, the 5 straight CUSA losses don't help. 4 of those games have been in overtime, so obviously it's a tough spot for the Blue Raiders to be in. However, we have seen teams catch fire late in years and overcome bad stretches to win tournaments and to win regular season games. Now, MTSU is going to have to try to do that. I think they're fully capable of managing something like that, but it's up to them to put all the pieces together to find their way back and potentially win this game against Kennesaw State. And you can't overcome the cliff overnight. You're going to have to find a way to gradually make some progress here and there. And that means taking it one game at a time, not thinking too much about the bigger picture. I've said it before, but thinking about the bigger picture is up to us back in the radio stations and back in the booths to consider. That's not something that the players probably need to worry about. In this situation, you just worry about the game you have tonight. And this Kennesaw State team, well, it's like we said before earlier this season, they play fast. They play really darn fast. One of the quickest adjusted tempo teams in the nation. MTSU is going to have to be ready for that. They're going to have to be ready to play that brand of basketball, and they've got to find a way to keep Kennesaw State at bay. We saw back in December, I think it was December 17th was when that game was played. When the Owls got going from the three-point line, MTSU were able to adjust to that. Eventually, they figured out kind of how to hold them in check and keep themselves in position to retain the lead. So they have to do that again in this game. Secondly, they've got to continue to play great team basketball. They've got to have that chemistry on offense. I think you're going to need to have several guys get big nights once again, because despite how well your defense is going to play, Kennesaw State, no matter what, they're going to be able to put some points on the board. So you've got to respond offensively, and you've got to find a way to get multiple guys involved. That's a second huge selling point for me in this game. And lastly, you just got to not let the moment be too big. Like I said, you've just got to let it come naturally to you. Understand that this is a game that you need to win, and yes, you're trying to make up some ground in the conference tournament, but to me, it's not even so much about the conference tournament or the standings. Obviously, it's something to keep in mind. It's just about getting back in the win column and getting that positive attitude in that locker room, getting the belief back in those guys. I'm sure that's what Nick McDevitt and the coaching staff are trying to get across to these players as the year continues and as they get further along into the month of February. It is certainly go time for this men's basketball team. And with Valentine's Day weekend coming up soon, there is no better time for MTSU to make this happen and to get themselves up to where they need to be in the Conference USA race. So best of luck to the men's team tonight. Again, that game tips off in about, I'd say, 15 minutes or so. When we come back, we'll talk MTSU baseball's opening weekend. Their opening series coming up Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. MTSU women's basketball and MTSU men's tennis also with big games coming up this weekend. All that and more coming up in just a little bit right here on All Sports Talk.
When illness or injury turns everyday moments into uphill battles, there are medical professionals who step in with skill, compassion, and unwavering dedication. My name is Joey P. I'm CEO of Murfreesboro Medical Clinic, and we are proud to highlight this month's MMC Heart for Healing recipient.
We recognize Dr. Sean Horwitz, a surgeon at MMC, whose reputation is built on as much his heart as it is his hands. Dr. Horwitz makes every patient feel like his priority. Whether performing complex robotic surgery or providing life-changing breast care, he combines elite technical precision with a rare, compassionate touch that truly defines him. Dr. Sean Horwitz, our MMC Heart for Healing.
If a doctor, nurse, or medical professional has made a difference in your life, tell WGNS. Help us recognize the medical heroes in our community by nominating them for the MMC Heart for Healing Award, and help us recognize the medical heroes in our community.
This is Chip Walters, and I'm honored to be your 2024 MTAR Realtor of the Year. I'm with Exit Realty Bob Lamb & Associates, and like many of you, I've seen the real estate market shift and change. People often ask, Chip, what's really going on? Well, that's a great question, and I believe in answering with solid, factual data. So let's cut through some of the noise. I invite you to reach out. Let's have a conversation about your real estate goals and the current market trends in your neighborhood. You can find all my contact information at choosechip.net.
Every team knows which play can be a winning move. I'm State Farm Agent Andy Womack, here to help life go right by combining your home and auto insurance. Call me today at 615-890-0850. It's a winning move that saves you time and money. Your ride, your stuff. You live with them together. I'm State Farm Agent Andy Womack. It's smart to protect them together, to help life go right. Give me a call at 615-890-0850 and let me help you save by combining your auto and renters.
You know, everyone has a more. First, it's a pony. Then to be on the cheer squad. Your more grows up just like you do. But your more can still carry you away or make you cheer. At First Bank, banking local gets you more. More of our time, more access to local bankers, more flexibility, and more product choices. Because getting more empowered and confident helps you pursue your more. That never grows old. First Bank. Bank local, get more. Member FDIC.
Here's Dr. Craig McCabe at McCabe Vision Center.
We have treatments for the skin of your face. So not only do we want you to see young, we want you to look younger too and get rid of a lot of that sun damage.
Dr. Craig McCabe, the eye doctor you hear on the radio.
Maybe you've got dark spots, acne, rosacea, even wrinkles. We can now treat.
McCabe Vision Center on Heritage Park Drive, just off Memorial, behind SunTrust Bank.
Good afternoon. It's pretty congested here on 40 East and westbound at Church Street. Here at Broadway to Mubrim, all that traffic trying to get off the South Loop. Building pretty good now on I-40 headed out through the Mount Juliet area. A little bit of radar out through certain parts of Wilson County. It's slow at times. 65 northbound here, trying to get either on Vietnam Vets or headed up towards Goodlettsville. Stein Dental Care in Nashville. That's who I use. Check them out online. Just Google Stein Dental Care Nashville. I'm Commander Chuck with your on-time traffic.
It's all sports talk from the Good Neighbor Network, FM 1019, 100.5, AM 1450, wgnsradio.com, and Big G TV.
Welcome back here on All Sports Talk. We are live here at the WGNS studio in beautiful Murfreesboro, Tennessee on this Thursday, February 12th, 2026. Valentine's Day 2026 is upon us. But you know what? The best Valentine we can have on All Sports Talk is having you here with us to listen in tonight. So glad you're listening from wherever you are, and hopefully you're enjoying the show, and hopefully you enjoy what should be a fantastic sports weekend, not just in pro sports. I know we've got a few different things that are going to be taking place this weekend. We'll get more into that later. But we've also got some fun stuff with MTSU athletics. It's going to be a crowded weekend of MTSU sports action. We've got games at the Murphy Center, games at Reese Smith Jr. Baseball Field, games at the Adams Tennis Complex. So, man, if you can, go out to some of these games because these athletes love the support. I've talked to them many times on many occasions about how much it means to have the home fans come out to these games. So if you can, check them out because there's going to be some awesome athletic contests taking place this weekend. All right, so let's keep going with the show. We're going to talk about MTSU women's basketball next. And, man, the Lady Raiders have lost some squeakers lately in heartbreaking fashion. And I got to be honest, I feel for how close they've been in these last couple games. MTSU played Missouri State last Thursday night along with FIU in Miami on Saturday and lost in about as tight of a fashion as you could imagine. The first game they lost 54-60, which is already pretty darn close. And then in the second game, they lost 58-60. So, again, it's 2 points. It's so close. Very small margins for error in both of these games kind of made the difference. And the interesting thing about these games is that they were both characterized by MTSU dominance in part of the game, but then incredible runs by the opponent in other parts of the game that ultimately put them behind to where they could not recover. So, it's a game of runs in basketball, and that's kind of what we saw here with this Lady Raiders team. But let's get into the actual analysis of the games. In the Missouri State game, MTSU had a really nice start, much like we saw in the men's Delaware game. Got off to a good start, played with a sense of urgency early, probably played a little bit more cleanly than they did later on in the game, but it was a game of body blows, and again, Missouri State was not going to be easily denied. They had to withstand an evenly matched blow from the Lady Bears in the second quarter with a 7-0 run, and then eventually it led to MTSU kind of getting the offense going a little bit more towards the end of the first half. Both teams were pretty evenly matched. Macy Pfeiffer had a phenomenal first half of basketball, a couple of great three-pointers along with playing well underneath the basket once again. What stuck out to me, though, was how well both defenses played. I think both teams did a really nice job, again, especially late in the game is when the defense tightened up, but both teams did a great job of disrupting their opponent, and that forced both teams to adjust, which they did well in that final half of play. Now, Missouri State just had a little bit more down the stretch, and sometimes that's the way it goes. I'm not really sure if they had a physical advantage, though, just from watching this game or anything on paper that would make you point to saying that they were just definitively the better team. I think really what it came down to is that they were hitting their shots and MTSU was missing on some of theirs. They had the better field goal percentage, and they made the big shots when it mattered the most. And that is kind of a simplified explanation, and there's more to it. You can obviously get down into the nitty-gritty and figure out more about it. But to me, that was the simplest explanation I could find, and it kind of tells the story. They're pretty evenly matched teams, and it's just that Missouri State had the shots ringing in a little bit better. And the least you can say about basketball is that it's a game of it comes down to shots and who makes them and who doesn't. But this is an example where I think that really was the case. So you got to credit Missouri State for doing that. It's unfortunate for MTSU, but just didn't quite hit the shots needed to win this game. Now, the FIU contest was kind of like a rerun in the way that it went down because MTSU played well throughout the entire game, had great scoring, and yet just did not have quite enough to topple the Panthers. Now, a slight difference in this game was that the offense was much better at the beginning of the game, and they got 34 points in the first half. So that Lady Raiders offense was scorching FIU in Miami early on in that first half. They were getting after the Panthers on offense, and they were just finding ways to score again and again and again. Now, one thing that was a problem early in the game was turnovers, and that became a bigger problem later. And if you've watched this FIU team throughout this year, you'll see just how special they can be once they get on a run. And that's what we saw in the third quarter. A 15-0 run. They took a 40-39 lead. So MTSU was up by as much as 14 in the third quarter, and yet FIU looked at that and said, nope, that's fine. We can still take the lead, and they did. So you got to credit FIU for finding a way to overcome a 14-point deficit in the third quarter to make it a neck and neck game late. And that just shows you that FIU's got some great productivity on offense. MTSU late in that game just wasn't quite as consistent, and eventually FIU came away with the victory again just by 1 point. And it's one of those things where you kick yourself after the fact and you wonder what went wrong. And like I mentioned earlier, I think part of it was the turnovers. Rick Insell talked a lot about this after the game, but FIU forced 25 total turnovers in this contest. It's been the one big thing, in my opinion, that's been holding back the Lady Raiders this year has been the frequency of turnovers, and it was a problem once more. Now, I played in that intramural basketball game I talked about last night, and one thing that I struggle with is turnovers as well. So I am no better than these awesome ladies when it comes to playing basketball and holding on to the ball. But again, in these sorts of situations, you don't want to turn the ball over this consistently, I should say. Rick Insell, like I said, mentioned in the aftermath of this game how big of a determining factor that it had in this contest. And he's right in that assessment because it continues to be the one issue that really holds MTSU back from their full potential. It was a problem again here. They got they had a turnover ratio of -8, if I'm not mistaken, in this contest. That's not going to win you basketball games, especially in Conference USA play. So this team understands that. Rick Insell does as well, and they just got to try to find a way to continue to address it. Now, Lady Raiders have a big game tonight against Jacksonville State. That will be at the Murphy Center at home and will be right here on WGNS. Pre-game starts right after the show comes to an end at 6 o'clock. Tip-off will be at 6:30. much like the men's team, this team is trying to get back on their horse for the rest of the season and make a run with an eye towards the CUSA tournament. The news for them is, though, they're a little bit better in terms of where they're at placing-wise than the men's team. If they want to make another run at the CUSA tournament and the NCAA tournament, then you have to win in February. Now, Jack State is a team that is hot on the heels of MTSU in the Conference USA race. MTSU 7-4 in conference play, Jack State 6-5. So this game is very pivotal as far as how MTSU shapes the rest of their season. There's no understating that getting a win here certainly sets MTSU for success and probably for one of those top 4 seeds in Conference USA play. So I'm very curious to see how the Lady Raiders are able to perform tonight in this one. And as you can hear, I'm shuffling the paper. I got some really loud paper here on All Sports Talk tonight. It's a very thick variety, as you can tell. But after that quick distraction, let's move on to our next topic. How about that? So MTSU baseball is back, and man, it feels good to say that. Now, if you want more of an in-depth analysis, we had a full preview yesterday with MTSU baseball sports information director Willie Failer. So look at that episode if you want a full analysis of the upcoming season. Again, that was shot yesterday on 2/11. But I wanted to remind you again that Blue Raider Baseball is back this weekend, and they have a very fun series with Bellarmine on the horizon. Now, Willie mentioned that this is, I think, the first time these two have matched up in a series since, I think, the 1970s. And from that historical perspective, it's going to be awesome to see. I think Reese Smith Jr. is a wildly underrated place to watch baseball, and it's a great atmosphere for baseball. So if you can, I would definitely check out some of the games in person this weekend. But if you can't go, check out our own Dick Palmer. He'll be on the broadcast. The old pro will have the call for MTSU baseball coming up this weekend. If I'm not mistaken, that will be on the Go Blue Raiders website. So check that out if you're interested in listening to the games live. This is going to be a fantastic opportunity for MTSU baseball to get themselves to a top level before they even get into conference play. I just have a few questions I want to pose here. Biggest questions to be answered coming into this series are this: how will the team look out of the gate, and who will the players be that show out in this one? Now, I think Drew Horn is, of course, a player to keep an eye on this season, and he is the lone All-CUSA player for MTSU going into the preseason. He would be the presumed ace of this staff, I'd imagine, but he's complemented by great arms like Chandler Alderman and John Michael Pickens, and I expect that bullpen to take a leap along with the starting arms. Of course, there were a few pitching struggles last year for MTSU, still had a pretty solid core, all things considered, but that is one thing that they've addressed in the offseason. They've brought in some new transfers. And, you know, one thing that I was interested in and curious in listening to Willie yesterday on the show was how he talked about this team has prioritized the local recruiting, bringing in local guys. Of course, you've got incredible programs like Walter State, former national JUCO champion team, in your backyard. So that's obviously a great place to pull players from, and MTSU has been able to do that. And I'm very curious to see how those guys will adapt to this new team and this new environment. If Trinidad Chambliss is anything to go off of in NCAA football, I think that they'll do just fine. But we've seen success stories like that all the time when it comes to college baseball and guys from JUCO doing well in the pros. So I think they'll be very, very solid additions for MTSU. I'm also keeping my eye on Cooper Clapp and Matt Wolf along with the infield. That's kind of my big question, is how will the MTSU infield defense look in this first series? Because in watching the Blue Raider baseball team, one of the biggest things I've noticed in recent years that has maybe somewhat held MTSU back in situations is struggles on the defensive side of the infield. Just making sure that the execution is there. Now, it hasn't been a determining factor on where they should or shouldn't go, but you just want to make sure you always get those plays right. So, will the infield look better this year? I think they'll definitely have made some improvements. They've got some great players who are entering older years, I guess, for lack of a better term. They're wiser, they're better, they've developed better, and I think they're going to be motivated to go out there and execute in this contest. I can tell you, Willie will tell you, they've been practicing these drills for a while now. They've got a great staff led by head coach Jerry Myers that's going to make sure that they're ready for this moment. So I do expect that aspect of the game to be up for MTSU as well. And I think those are two guys. I think those are the ones that I'm really curious to keep an eye on. I'm not as familiar with Matt Wolf and Cooper Clapp, at least watching them on the field. Of course, I've studied them for a while, just looking at the media and all that. But I'm very curious to see how they play on a broadcast or in person even, because, spoiler alert, I might be at a couple of these games myself. We'll see. But I go back to expectations with this team, not to set them in stone, but as far as what they can do this year. I talked about this with Willie last night as well. To me, the sky is 100% the limit if MTSU plays up to their potential. Last year, the Blue Raiders were 23-32 overall and 8-19 in Conference USA play. But when you look a little deeper into the story, you see that at home, the Blue Raiders played really, really solid baseball. They were able to get wins more often than not. They had a winning record at home. They played better offense. They had better bats. It seemed like the pitching was overall better. They fed off the Reese Smith Jr. crowd. On the road was a little bit of a different story, and I think that's where the disparity is, at least the big disparity, comes in. MTSU was 4-19 on the road last year, and it kind of curtailed them as far as their potential for the season. And some teams run into that. They just don't quite have the same stuff on the road that they normally would at home. But MTSU didn't win a single CUSA Road Series on the season. And, it's a tough thing for, I'm sure, Blue Raider fans to swallow. But if anything, I think if you're a player this year, you look at that and you say, okay, we can't let that happen again in Road Series. We got to play our best brand of baseball, and we've got to embrace the environment. Players and coaches will tell you, you're not going to be able to stop what you experience on the road. The only thing you can do is embrace that and adjust to it. And I'm sure that those older guys who've been on the team for a while are going to be the ones kind of hammering home the point, hey, just enjoy the atmosphere and don't worry about it. Execute. Just play your normal brand of baseball. Play it like it's a 3 o'clock practice on Thursday night before the game. Do it that way, because if you get overwhelmed by the environment and you let them get in your head, you're toast as far as winning the game. So I'm curious to see if MTSU baseball will be able to clean it up on the road. That's going to be a huge point for them this season, especially considering they were 4-19 a season ago. So we'll see if the mojo changes, but I think a big telling point is going to be this series against Bellarmine at home this weekend, because if they get off to a great start and play the brand of baseball that we think they can play and are able to carry that over throughout the rest of their home series early in the season, this could be a really fun team to watch here in 2026. So keep an eye on the Reese this weekend. We got one more segment in the show. We'll talk MTSU tennis with a couple of big matches coming up this weekend. And, of course, the Daytona 500 preview will be coming up in just a little bit. Plus, the Blue Raider Insider Report on the other side of this break. All that and more still to come on All Sports Talk.
Architects, engineers, and builders, whether you need detailed technical drawings, large format plans, or quick, accurate reproductions, Franklin's Printworks delivers clarity, precision, and fast turnaround.
Since we've added that capability, there's a big demand for blueprints, so we're getting a lot of times turn those around in 24 hours.
Jeff Carlton at Franklin's Printworks.
Usually they're like 24 by 36, and they require somebody that knows what they're doing and has the capabilities to produce them.
Clarity, accuracy, and fast turnaround from Franklin's Printworks.
Discover hidden treasures at the Garden Patch Thrift Shop on Spring Street in Murfreesboro. Whether you're searching for stylish clothing, sturdy furniture, or even large appliances, we've got them all at prices that you'll love. But here's the best part. 100% of your purchase supports Greenhouse Ministries, serving over 70 families a day. Your shopping dollars go straight back into the community, making a real impact. Shop smart and give back at the Garden Patch Thrift Shop on Spring Street in Murfreesboro.
Hi, I'm Wade Hayes, owner of Toots Good Food and Fun. I strongly believe that volunteers make a positive difference in the quality of life here in our community.
State Farm Agent Michael Busey serves as Vice Chair for Main Street Murfreesboro's Advisory Board. He is essentially the board's steady second in command, the person who keeps things moving when the chair can't be there, and helps to share the leadership load. Michael Busey, a dedicated volunteer with Main Street Murfreesboro, whom people can count on.
At Toots, we strongly believe that it's important for every one of our citizens to give some of their time and talent back into the community. And we want to honor these individuals with a Toots gift certificate good at any of our Rutherford County locations. 860 Northwest Broad Street, on Church Street in the Barfield area, in Smyrna on Sam Ridley, and Toots West on Franklin Road at Rucker Lane.
Next on All Sports Talk, it's the Blue Raider Insider Report with Chip Walters of Exit Realty, Bob Lamb & Associates.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and let's talk women's basketball. First of all, at the Murphy Center tonight at 6:30 as the Lady Raiders take on the Jacksonville State Gamecocks. The game can be heard right here on the Blue Raider Network and WGNS, beginning with the pregame show at 6 o'clock. Tip-off is at 6:30. This marks the sixth meeting in the series history between the Blue Raiders and Gamecocks. The Blue Raiders own a 5-0 lead over Jack State in the all-time series. The Blue Raiders won the previous meeting 69-52 earlier this season in Jacksonville, Alabama. 4 Blue Raiders were in double figures that night. Elena Contreras led the way with 21 points on 8 of 10 shooting. Looking at the Conference USA schedule tonight in women's basketball, Kennesaw State is at Western Kentucky. Matter of fact, that game is already concluded. Kennesaw won the game by a score of 55-51. UTEP is at Liberty, New Mexico State at Delaware, Missouri State at Sam Houston, and FIU is at Louisiana Tech as far as the rest of the schedule is concerned. Louisiana Tech leads the way and leads the pack on the women's side with a 10-1 record. Sam Houston and Missouri State are 7-3. FIU and MTSU are 7-4 and tied for 4th place going into tonight's action. The Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders actually getting ready to tip off right now down in Kennesaw, just on the north side of Atlanta. And the Blue Raiders in game number 2 of 4 straight road games away from Murphy Center. The tilt against the Owls is on CBS Sports Network tonight, but the Blue Raider Network broadcast can be heard here in Murfreesboro on 95.1 FM, as well as the Blue Raider Game Day app and GoBlueRaiders.com. Middle trying to break a 5-game losing streak, and the Blue Raiders have lost 5 games by a total of 14 points and have had 2 back-to-back overtime games in this stretch. So Middle is very, very close, and right now they expect another close game tonight here at Kennesaw. They beat the Owls earlier this year by a score of 68-67. That was back on December 17th in the first game of the Conference USA season. And so Middle tonight in this a quagmire of teams in the conference. Liberty was a winner last night on the road at New Mexico State by a score of 77-75, and UTEP upsets Jacksonville State on the road 69-64. So that mishmash of teams from 2nd through 11th place is just gotten even tighter. Liberty is in first place, 13-0 after their win last night. Sam Houston and Jacksonville State are now 8-5, tied for 2nd. Missouri State's in 4th at 7-5. Then you've got Kennesaw, Louisiana Tech at 6-6. Western is at 6-7, UTEP 6-8, Middle 5-7, FIU 4-8, and New Mexico State 4-10. Delaware rounds out the pack with a record of 3-9. So looking at ahead at tennis, men's tennis right now playing the University of Louisville. That game, that match rather, is going on out at the Adams Tennis Complex, and they're actually on tomorrow, I should say, at 5 p.m. Louisville comes in with a 9-3 record. Middle is 6-2 on the year. And always a fun time, those Friday afternoon matches out at the Adams Tennis Complex. All right, that's it for tonight. We'll have another update for you tomorrow right here on the Big G, WGNS.
It's All Sports Talk from the Good Neighbor Network, FM 1019, 100.5, AM 1450, wgnsradio.com, and Big G TV.
Thank you, Chipper. This is the Good Neighbor Network, WGNS, and this is All Sports Talk on a Thursday night, Thursday, February 12th, 2026. As Chip mentioned, MTSU men's basketball at this point already in progress. I don't have a live score update on the game, but of course you can make sure to stay tuned to WGNS to get that as time goes on. And of course, tonight, women's basketball is in Murfreesboro at the Murphy Center, hosting Jacksonville State in what should be an awesome game. Tip-off will be at 6:30 with pregame starting immediately after the conclusion of the show tonight. Let's talk briefly about MTSU men's tennis. They've got a couple big matchups this weekend. First up, they take on Louisville, and that's going to have a curious dynamic for MTSU, considering that they have not played since February 5th against Virginia Tech. Now, that's not a huge break necessarily, but for this team that plays 2 or 3 matches a weekend, that is a long time by their standards. Now, they were supposed to play Alabama on Sunday, February 8th, but that match has now been postponed. So, how does MTSU respond to the layoff, and will that have an effect on this match? I would imagine not, because of Jimmy Borendame's focus and how that translates to this team, but you can never know for sure. Now, it's up to the players to respond to what he's teaching them. Knowing Jimmy and knowing how he operates, I'd say that his team is going to be dialed in. They'll be ready for it, but they're going to have a pretty good test in being dialed in for this match. You've already had several players have the CUSA Athlete of the Week honor dished out to them, and you've now got some of the doubles teams showing out as well. There was one of the pairings for MTSU just got named Doubles Team of the Week, and I can't for the life of me think about who it was right now, but that took place earlier this week as well, so it just continues the awards due to flow in for the MTSU men's tennis team. Don't forget, they now have wins against Virginia Tech, Harvard, and UAB, among any others, but they're still looking for a win against an ACC team this year. They could get that. They're taking on Louisville this weekend to start on Friday night. That'll be coming up tomorrow night at 5 o'clock. Cardinals are 9-3 on the season. Despite that strong record, they have been tripped up by a few teams. Cornell, Notre Dame, and Kentucky have all beaten them, none of whom, as of right now, are ranked. Now, I think that despite the record, this is a winnable match for MTSU. When you look at comparative matchups, MTSU already beat Harvard earlier this season, who's a pretty common rival of Cornell, so Ivy League advantage goes to MTSU as far as common opponents. Now, they haven't played anybody like Notre Dame or Kentucky yet, but it's still an interesting one for the Blue Raiders. And I misspoke earlier when I said they hadn't beaten an ACC team, because they have. They beat Virginia Tech this past weekend, who is an ACC school, by the way, just to make sure, in case you didn't already know that. But a second win against an ACC team would be more accurate. But they have an opportunity to do that. But it won't be the only match they have this weekend. They go to play Oklahoma State in Stillwater, who has been a thorn in the side of MTSU before. I remember a few years ago they came in and beat MTSU at the ATC, which is not an easy thing to do. They've got a solid record of 6-2 overall on the season and are undefeated at home. 2 losses are to Yale and Princeton on the road, and again, MTSU does have a win over an Ivy League opponent, which Oklahoma State does not. But that doesn't mean everything. It's just something to know. Now, the Pokes, they are charging hard late in this year. Dehydrated. And they just picked up a 4-3 win over Arkansas and a 7-0 win over Creighton before that. That's called a bagel, by the way, in tennis. Now, MTSU going all the way to Stillwater is going to be a heck of a trip for the Blue Raiders. That is a long way to go for any sort of game or any sort of match. And not to diminish that, but you've also got the Louisville match ahead of that the day before. So you're talking about playing Louisville on Friday night at home, then flying to Stillwater to play Oklahoma State just 2 days later. So that is a really hard back-to-back against 2 power teams, and that seems like on paper it may be too much to bear for MTSU just from a logistics standpoint. However, we've seen this program do this before. They have come out into stretches like this and come out the other side with victories in both matches. I believe they certainly have the capability to do that again. I think on paper they certainly have a lot of matchups that would favor them. I think winning the doubles point in both matches is going to be key, because I trust them to get three or so singles, but asking 4 or 5 of those is going to be really difficult for MTSU in both of those matchups. So winning the doubles point, which I think they will do, will be a huge thing for the Blue Raiders if they get it. And if they get both wins, it's going to be a defining stretch in 2026 for them. If they win, I think they've got a really interesting path moving forward, potentially to an NCAA tournament berth. So we'll see how MTSU handles the Cardinals and the Cowboys. And now, The grand finale of the show tonight is the first race of the NASCAR Cup Series season, the Daytona 500. Yes, sir, it is this weekend, and boogity, 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 in the words of Darrell Waltrip, it is great to be back. Now, the duels, a.k.a. the Twin 125s, are tonight. That will set up the qualifying order, or at least the rest of the qualifying order in this race. But we do now know that the 500 is going to have Kyle Busch and Chase Briscoe on the front row. Qualifying was last night, by the way, and that is who got the best of it. Now, of course, Kyle Busch is a sentimental favorite to win the Daytona 500. He has not won it, though, in 20 tries. Kind of like a certain other NASCAR bad boy who hadn't won the Daytona 500 in 20 tries. So maybe Kyle Busch will follow that script. Will Kyle be able to win the 500? We'll see. Time will tell. Now, here's another question, and Willie brought this up last night on the show. Can William Byron get 3 in a row? Now, that's going to be a really hard thing to manage. Byron really good in these situations, but it's certainly a lot to ask in this matchup. Or in this race, I should say. Been saying matchup quite a bit tonight. This race could have the impact of rain to consider as well, with showers in the area scheduled for the afternoon, which it's honestly, and this is the unfortunate thing, it's kind of been the standard for the Rain-Tona 500, as I'm now calling it, because every single year it seems like rain impacts it in some way. I think 4 of the last 5 Daytona 500s have had rain come into play, which it is Florida, and I get it, it's going to rain, but man, I think people just want to see clear conditions on race day and everything go the way it's supposed to, because everything looks great leading up to the race. Duel should be fine tonight. Truck race should be fine Friday night. ARCA and the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, got to say O'Reilly Auto Parts now, on Saturday looks good. It's just the Sunday race, the Daytona 500, that looks like it may have some rain affected. So fingers crossed that moves out. Just do your rain dance, ladies and gentlemen, and hopefully it'll work out. But there are a lot of great storylines coming into this race. Connor Zilisch, with his first full season, going to be racing for Trackhouse this year. 19-year-old phenom, expecting him to break out in a big way, hopefully in his rookie season. Corey Heim, defending Truck Series champion, being one of the fastest cars on the board, despite not having a full-time ride, which I think is wild that he doesn't. And you got Justin Allgaier already locked in for Junior Motorsports on speed. Tony Stewart and Cletus McFarland, both in the truck race. You got tremendous storylines all around. So check out all the stuff this weekend, because it's going to be a fantastic weekend at Daytona. But I know what you're here for. You want to hear my prediction, I would say, for this race. Let's see if I can put my money where my mouth is. Now, my final prediction for this race is that we're going to see intensity from the start. If rain is on the horizon, expect these guys to be driving like the mortgages do. I do expect that desperation will lead to an early big one within the first 50 laps. Yes, I think the big one is going to happen within the first 50 laps, maybe the first of a couple big ones, but we're going to see a big one in the first 50 laps of the race because of that looming threat of rain. I think it's just going to make drivers more antsy, a little more skittish, and could lead to a big crash. Now, I hope not, but I'm being realistic here. From that, I have to ask who makes it through the crash and who is going to be out front late. I think the Penske cars have a knack for being in the right place at the right time. They're usually always in the decision, or at least close to the decision of the 500. And like I said last night, I've got a feeling that there's a certain guy who's going to be in position late who is a Penske car. But to me, this race comes down to 3 guys: Hamlin, Kyle Busch, and the aforementioned Penske driver, Ryan Blaney. I think one of those 3 will definitely win this 500. But I think Ryan Blaney, who's been on the doorstep time and time again, he's going to make his way through that first big one. He's going to set himself up late. Don't know if he's going to have any help from his teammates. We'll see if they're still in the race. Depends on if Cindric and Logano, avoid the big one, kind of like Blaney in this situation. But I think he's going to be in the mix. I think Busch will as well. I think Hamlin will as well. These 3 have a shootout to the line. Hopefully won't crash. Hopefully we get a nice clean finish all the way to the start-finish line. I think Blaney gets it done in a great finish and celebrates with the champagne and maybe the rain falling down on him at Daytona Beach. Well, that does it for the show here on Thursday night. But, folks, we will be back with another great edition coming up next week on Wednesday. We'll also be back on Thursday, so you won't have to miss us for too long here on All Sports Talk. And by the way, coming up in just a few minutes, MTSU women's basketball versus Jacksonville State at home tonight. Pregame is at 6 o'clock, tip-off at 6:30. Make sure you stay tuned right after the conclusion of this show. All right, that's all we've got, so we'll see you next week. So long, everybody, and have an electric night. This has been All Sports Talk.
When you make the right decision, it feels good, like picking the perfect accent rug or choosing a good night's sleep over an all-night crime show binge. It feels